And it's at this point that I do indeed come to shadow education, which has been mentioned. Thank you, Dr. Tang, for mentioning it, and other colleagues. This is something that I personally have been working on for the last 15 years. And the question, you may be saying, what is shadow education? Basically, I'm here talking about the parallel system of private tutoring, Boda, in Cantonese. We can talk to the school students here. How many of them after school go to their own supplementary classes? That's what I'm talking about. Why is it called shadow education? Because the extra classes mimic the curriculum of the mainstream. As the mathematics curriculum changes, so it changes in the tutoring after school. As liberal studies is brought in as a new subject in the schools, liberal studies then enters the supplementary tutoring. As the school system expands, the shadow system, the tutoring system, expands. It takes many forms. Let me begin with these people. I expect you recognize some of these people. Here are some of the other ones. There are additional forms. There's no hesitation in these commercial providers about advertising themselves. This one is called the Good Teacher Tutorial Center, just in case you think that good teachers only live in the tutorial centers, and perhaps in that one. And it is evidently leading into the top tutoring. This is a huge phenomenon in Hong Kong. You're aware of it. It's become much more visible. It's really in your face, on the back of the buses, advertising all over the place. And I will point out that it's not just a Hong Kong phenomenon. Where does it come from? Well, it partly comes from the pressures of our own school system, and perhaps some of our students sometimes feel like that. But also there's a question in here as to what is cause and what is effect. This student at the top with all of the books. Are these school books or are they the tutoring books? If we talk to our students, it may be the tutoring which is causing the books as much as the school. Why is that student falling asleep? Well, maybe he was studying late at night in the tutoring center. So the shadow system interacts very strongly with the school system. With colleagues here in the University of Hong Kong, I am looking at this, and here are some numbers collected by the team. We have a GRF grant, General Research Fund, Chad Likens, Ora Kuo, Wang Dan, Tan Shen Li, Emily Mang. We are working together on that. Here are the numbers that we have done a survey of students to find out how many of them are receiving supplementary tutoring. And the answer is that for the present academic year, 54% of Form 3 students, grade 9 students, are receiving extra classes. By the time they get to Form 6, it's 72%. Now, I wonder what you think about those numbers, whether it's a surprise to you or whether it's not a surprise. It's, in my view, a high number, especially the Form 6 number, and I have the impression that the number is going up. By the time you get to 3/4 of the population, the 1/4 that isn't going to tutoring begins to feel self-conscious about it. Those are the Hong Kong numbers. What about the rest of the world? Well, here are some figures for the rest of the world to say this is not just a Hong Kong phenomenon. It is increasingly visible throughout the world. The shadow system is spreading. Traditionally, people have thought about this as something for East Asia, for Japan, for Korea, for Taiwan, for Hong Kong. It's growing very fast in mainland China, but it's also very significant in South Asia and even in Europe. I haven't put the numbers there for Africa, but it's growing strongly in Africa as well. And I would argue that this has got sharp implications for the EFA agenda in several ways. First, the shadow is not a neutral shadow. The shadow is to some extent impacting on the school system itself. It can lead to tiredness, it can stretch students in desirable ways, but it can also cause difficulties. I'm going to elaborate on that in a moment. Here are at least some of the issues to elaborate. This shadow education in Hong Kong, in the rest of Asia, elsewhere, consumes household resources. Many families can afford it, but some families cannot afford it. UNESCO talks about free education for all. It's enshrined even in the Human Rights Declaration. But frankly, education is not free. The front door may say it's free, but the back door says, what about the private tutoring? It can reduce stress for students, absolutely. It can help slow achievers to catch up with their peers. It can assist them to feel confident. It can stretch high achievers in good ways. But it can also increase the stress on students. As you can see, it can undermine as well as support the schools. Overall, I'm saying as a research agenda to fit in with UNESCO, we need much better indicators of quality. And for the EFA agenda, there is the issue of inequalities. Well, this is a developing research agenda. For my own work, I have been working on this since 1999. There is a set of four books, which 3 of the 4 are published by UNESCO, by the IIEP, the other one by the Open Society Foundation. The English book in the corner, the 2009 one, has been translated into a large number of languages. The fact that partners are wishing to translate this book is, to me, showing that they are finding the resonance of this theme to their own circumstances. And I am myself very glad that they are finding that this needs to be talked about, needs to be researched. I see that the UNESCO chair can contribute some dimensions on this theme. That was a global book. The one on the left is a European book. I was very pleased that the European Union came to me and said, Professor Bray, we're interested in your global book. Could you look at the European countries, please? So I did, and indeed that is a report for the European Union, which has shaken them a little bit. It's showing that there is a great deal of shadow education in Europe, especially in southern Europe, Cyprus, Malta, but also Western Europe, France, the United Kingdom, and elsewhere. The shadow is growing, which is also why I'm saying this is a global agenda. On the right is a new book, May 2012. In fact, it was only published electronically last week, and we received the paper copies today. You will find them on the table. You will see a copy of it outside, written with my colleague Chad Likens. So, I feel that there is a big agenda that needs to be followed through. This is the work that we are doing in Hong Kong, collecting data from the schools, feeding back to the schools, discussing with the schools what they should be doing, how they can respond to it. And equally, as a comparative education team, we're working in other parts of the world as well. The second part is about the ESD agenda. This, again, is something in which UNESCO is taking the lead. There is a decade of education for sustainable development. We're near the end of that decade. It is also being reassessed. But again, this is something very much for us in Hong Kong as we think about what we do and how we do it. And again, I would urge you to look at the school's displays, many of which result from the partnership with UNESCO Hong Kong Association, and they are thinking through what we are teaching and how we are teaching it. The ESD agenda is very much concerned with the content of education and the irony that the educated nations, the rich countries, leave the greatest, the deepest ecological footprints. And so what that is saying is, here is an agenda for the rich countries in particular. The Millennium Development Goals have been interpreted, universal primary education, as if they're for the poor countries. I would argue that the quality EFA should be rich as well as poor. But they converge as a pair of mandates. And the decade is very much concerned with the values and the behavior and the lifestyles that we should advocate. Here is a diagram which indeed shows how the EFA and the ESD agendas fit together with each other and with the Millennium Development Goals. So from there, wrapping up, I want to think about the agenda ahead, particularly for the chair. It will be my role in the next 4 years. The chair has been conferred for 4 years, after which it will be evaluated. We hope it will be renewed. We hope it will be ongoing beyond that. I am the chairholder for the 4 years, but working fortunately with other people so that I don't have to just myself as one individual answer Professor Roland Cheen and deliver all of his expectations. We have a team approach here. I want to think about the agenda for us in Hong Kong U, for us in UNESCO, and indeed for the partners. Here in Hong Kong U, we have already a lot going on. I urge you to look at the banner for the Common Core Curriculum. We have an exciting module on education poverty and the next generation. Outside, you can look at it. We are doing some valuable work in experiential learning. CEDARS and the Gallant Ho Centre are enabling our students to learn by doing across the curriculum and within and beyond the classroom. I see it as a broad agenda on quality education for all. I've emphasized shadow education, but there are many other dimensions in which colleagues have expertise, and in education for sustainable development. We see that partnerships are absolutely the way to work and the only way to work. And insofar as the chairs are devised as a network, we can see how we can all collaborate with each other. So, winding up, I, at this stage, have got 2 core conclusions. We do have a vision, a broad vision. I was glad to hear Professor Cheen call it a noble vision. It fits absolutely in the university vision, our faculty vision, and it dovetails absolutely with the UNESCO mission. To think of quality education for all with a sustainable focus and the social significance of equity and social justice. From there, that concludes the main part of what I want to say in plenary, but it does lead to the whole question of partnership. And in a moment, I'm going to ask our parent MCs to play their role again, because I think that it's now time for the further perspectives of community dialogue And I'm hoping that Kelsey and Daniel are going to spread the responsibility by bringing 5 other people onto the stage here. Thank you very much.